Welcome to Coddiwompling along the Dowel with Noel Eastwood. This is episode 11 and I'm talking about reading your child's chart. Now I do have an earlier video of, I think I did it a couple of years ago, on doing a general reading, and what I'm doing is adding a few little bit extra bits to how to read your own chart or your child's chart. If you're an astrologer, this will help you in reading other your clients' charts as well. What I'm going to do is, well, there's my script. I'll try and keep to that as best I can, and it's a nice post-it note so I can see it clearly. It's better than the thing I had in the last episode. Here we have a chart of today. Okay, so it's the 10th of March. It's 8:19. It's Placidus. So even though I'm transitioning across to whole signs, I'm using Placidus for this particular exercise, just because most people are used to it. Just a quick orientation. Here we have the natal chart. We have the angles, the 1st, the 4th, the 7th and the 10th houses. These are called angular houses, and they're critical in astrology. They're like the 4 pillars that you build things on. You know, they're rock solid. This anchors the chart for me. So fire, water, air, and earth. Down here we have the aspect grid, so we can look at what the moon is doing. So the aspects that the moon forms, these are the aspect lines. And moon is trine Mars, so that's the blue line there. Moon is conjunct Saturn. There's a 2-degree orb, so it's a tight conjunction. Square Uranus, that's the red line. That's a difficult aspect. The blue ones are comfortable. Sextiles there, trines there. And sextile, the moon is sextile Kiron and Ceres. Here they are here, just there. Over here we've got the aspects, the colours that they are, what they look like. So we've got that square is a square there. This is the name of the signs for your client to look at. Here's the planets, the glyph that we're using, the glyph for the sign that it's in. So moon is in the sign of Aquarius, and it's in the 10th house. Okay. We have the aspects there, and we have an elementary grid for the elements and the modes. Elements are critical, so please take note of elements in all your readings. This splits up the chart into planets above the horizon, below the horizon, east and west, and then the quadrants. Now you don't need all this fluffy stuff. I normally don't use them. However, when I was a beginner astrologer, I used them all the time. I particularly used this grid here. That was the most important thing to me. All my charts had grids. Today, I can generally do without it. Okay, the Ascendant Line is everything in astrology. The Ascendant and the Midheaven. This is this points to the horizon, or you could say that this is the horizon. So if you're standing on the beach looking out at the horizon points to the ascendant if it's pointing east. So this is the east point, and that's where the constellations are around the planet. This point moves roughly 1 degree every 4 minutes, and this is where we need to understand why it is so important to have an accurate birth time, and I'm going to show that now. We have 2 planets, Ceres, which is an asteroid or a dwarf planet, I think it's now, at 6 degrees, so that is separating or moving away from the ascendant. And then we have Kiron at 7 degrees, which is separating as well. These 2 guys are really important. They tell us a lot about how this child was born, that it was probably quite a difficult birth. Kiron is not your friend, mostly. Kiron in the chart points to where you have your wound. It can be a psychological wound, emotional, or a physical wound. And if you've got it on your ascendant, there's a chance that the birth was difficult. I have Kiron basically in the same position as in this child's chart, and my birth was rather traumatic. Aries birth can also mean a fast birth, but also could be lots of blood, could be fairly traumatic as well. So it gives us a little bit of a clue. It's not always dead accurate. And please don't ever think that astrology has all the answers. I get asked all sorts of weird questions, particularly on the forum. And astrology is not godlike. It cannot do things. It cannot explain everything. We are born with these set of principles, but it's how life influences us that determines how these parts play out in our lives. If they're not triggered, then they remain dormant. Life gives us opportunities and puts us in situations where we can manifest these in many, many, many ways. Okay, so that this first house in the ascendant indicates actual childbirth. In most instances, don't take that for gospel, but it is the part of our psyche that interacts with the rest of the world. So how will this child interact with the world as it gets older? Not initially, because remember, babies sleep basically for the first 3 to 6 months. They're born early because the birth canal is so small. They have to pop out early before, otherwise have to be carved out. If you've had children or witnessed childbirth, as I have witnessed childbirth, it's a pretty scary affair. 1 in 10 women die, like in the past, at childbirth. That's dangerous. So I cast my eye at this as the first point of call, and it also reminds us that every minute this angle is going to change because the Earth is spinning round and round and round and round and round. That's how we have days and nights, because the Earth is rotating on its axis. Now I want to show you what happens when we change times and why birth time, an accurate birth time, is critical. If we look at these two planets, Ceres and Kiron, they are past 5 degrees. So they've gone past, or they're separating and moving away from the ascendant. This is 6 degrees, that's 7 degrees, and the ascendant is 5. But if I move, let me go to minutes, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is roughly 1 degree of arc. Then we now have Ceres applying, and the applying aspect builds tension and emphasizes the planet that is applying, and the planets that are separating and moving away, they are releasing energy. They're not so intense. So in 4 minutes, we now have an emphasis, even greater emphasis, on Ceres. If we go forward 1, 2, 3, 4 more minutes, we now have Chiron's coming up closer, 1, 2, 3, 4. So in 12 minutes of time, we now have these two planets applying to the ascendant, and see how the ascendant has moved 3 degrees in arc. So it's gone from 5 degrees to 8 degrees. So every 4 minutes, we're looking at roughly 1 degree movement. And see how the planets are going in this way, because it's the way the Earth turns, but it's almost like there's a dial there, and it turns the whole chart like that in a clockwise direction. Yet, over days and days and days, the planets are moving in this direction. Okay, they're going through the zodiac in the natural way, from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. So we're back to where we were. First point of call is always the first house in the ascendant. Next, I look at Capricorn. And next, I look at the midheaven, and there is Capricorn. Capricorn sitting on the cusp. And Capricorn is a nice thing for being on the 10th, because it's naturally on the 10th anyway, and this is what we call a natural chart. Aries on the 1st, Taurus on the 2nd, Gemini on the 3rd, which is how the signs are arranged when we teach astrology. It just so happens the way it is. I didn't plan this at all. This is a random chart from this morning. A Capricorn midheaven means that this person or this child through life will be moving towards its goals in a stepwise, consolidated, structured fashion. And that is going to be a bonus because they're quite emotional. Why do I say that they're emotional? First of all, there's Aries on the cusp. They're going to be a little bit like a bull at a gate. Ceres on the cusp here, or just sitting below the cusp, is a modifying effect. She's the goddess of fertility and the harvest, and she's gentle. She's lovely, she's warm and loving, and she's kind. So that modifies the robust little ram that runs around bumping people over and laughing and running to the water fountain and trying to get there first and pushing kids over, just in the enthusiasm of life. And then the other part of their psyche is this Kiron Effect, which is everything is painful. This is a really sensitive planet sitting on a very sensitive point. So this person's going to feel hurt a lot of the time. And they're going to learn about pain because Kiron does not give off his gifts freely. You have to earn the gift of healing and the gift of knowledge by, putting your hand into the fire until it burns you. He's a really tough taskmaster. Don't ever think that Kiron is the good guy. He's hard. The gifts that he gives are worth the effort, but the effort is very painful. So already we can see that there's a great deal of sensitivity. The other thing too, there's a lot of hyperactivity in this chart, inattention and hyperactivity. And a rambunctious Aries personality is going to get into trouble a lot, and he won't really understand why. And that's a horrible thing for a kid, to get into trouble for being a child, for knocking things over. They don't deliberately go and knock over, the pots and pans in the kitchen deliberately. They're doing it because they're running through there so fast because they're so excited and enthusiastic. So this is something to be aware of with the Ascendant, because that is the presentation, the most immediate presentation in a child's life is their Ascendant. Spent a lot of time looking at this and studying it, and their rulerships. Who rules Aries is Mars. Where is Mars? On the cusp of the 3rd in Gemini. So this is his mouth. This is an enthusiasm, and the 3rd house is communication, the mental process. He's going to talk a lot. He or she is going to be possibly argumentative, but a great debater. Look at the beautiful aspects to Mars, nicely aspected to Pluto, to Moon, let's go and have a look. Mars is trine the Moon and trine Saturn, trine Pluto, sextile Ceres, and beautifully aspected. So how does he channel all of this activity that he has built inside of him, this enthusiasm for life? Is by communicating, sharing it. At school, he'll love school. Absolutely love school. Right, sensitivity. We look at that one. 1st house first, 10th house second, and this is a need to control. So Pluto in the 10th is I have to control my environment. For me to achieve what I want to achieve, which is the 10th house and the midheaven, I need to control. I need to understand at depth. And how do I channel that? Well, I get my buddy Mars to help me. So here we have Moon in Aquarius conjunct Saturn, and they're both trine Mars, which is important. They're both square Uranus, and they're both sextile to Ceres and Kiron. And we see that down here, trine Mars conjunct Saturn, square Uranus, sextile Kiron, sextile Ceres, and trine the north node. Moon is water, Aquarius is air, and this moon is almost in the 11th house, which is an air house as well. Now moon in Aquarius is a nervy, generally spontaneous, highly intuitive, but super duper sensitive and easily stressed and overwhelmed. Too much activity in the mind. So there's a lot of tension we're seeing now. We've got tension here because he's physically active and very sensitive and easily hurt, but he can channel it by being at school and playing all the games, and he'll be like super in the classroom, very sharp mind, and wanting to do jobs for the teacher. He or she, I'm using he a lot, sorry. Saturn is a wet blanket. Saturn is the rules and order and structure and a bit bossy, so it could be a bossy mum or a bossy father. We don't know who the father and mother is yet. We'd have to talk to them. So here we have a nervy moon that feels under pressure to conform from Saturn. So how does she manage those emotions that she just wants to burst out crying and run away? She channels it through her Mars. There's tension from Uranus as well. Uranus rules Aquarius. So we've got tension. So channeling it in physical activity through the sextiles through the ascendant. The ascendant is physical activity. And the trines to Mars is physical as well, through the north node, which is buried in the house of the mind and schooling and activities of numbers and letters and reading, is one way of managing tension for this child. There's another thing that points to stress and worry. We have an Aquarian Stellium, and we basically have a stellium in the 11th house. So we got this triple up on Uranian energy, Aquarian energy. They're all in 4 in Aquarius, 4, and basically 4. This moon gets pulled into the 11th house, in the 11th house. So we've got a lot of tension. We've got frustration between Jupiter and Saturn, that Jupiter wants to go for it and run and have adventures. Saturn wants to pull the brakes on all the time, preaching caution and what are the consequences and don't do this and do that. So we have stress building up that needs to be expressed, and this is the best way through physical exercise, boxing, running, reading, study, through debating, intellectual challenges, trivial pursuit. Mind you, in infancy, a lot of those things aren't going to happen. We're going to see the first house primarily. That's what you're going to see in those first couple of years, is the acting out of the first house. We're going to see a sensitive child, but these other effects won't come into, you won't notice them until they get older. Mercury is in a lovely place. Mercury's happy wherever you place Mercury. Conjunct Jupiter and trine, what have we got? Trine the north node. Let's go down. Conjunct Jupiter and trine the north node down here. So Mercury, mind, fantastic. Nothing to worry about. Rules Gemini on the 3rd, perfect. Rules the descendant, the 7th house of other people, perfect. A great communicator. But what I'm looking at here now is moving from the moon to the sun, and the sun is in a very interesting place. Sun in the 12th house, in Pisces, conjunct Neptune and Venus. So this tells us that the sun is sort of hidden. It's in a very sensitive house that is in the deep, deep unconscious. So this person is going to be triply sensitive, super sensitive from the ascendant and the activity there, super sensitive from all the Aquarius and the moon in Aquarius conjunct Saturn, and now we've got sensitivity from moon conjunct Neptune. So what does that tell us? It tells us that there would be sense of abandonment, sense of loneliness that would pervade through them. And so all that we have are squares to the north node. So we have like a little group of friends here huddled together in the cave of the 12th house. And if you haven't read my book on the 12 houses or watched my previous video on the psychic houses, then please do so, because that will explain the 12th house more for you. But what this says is there's a great deal of sensitivity about others, because humans weren't designed to be alone. And this child here will often feel alone. Now remember that I said earlier is that these are not going to be activated immediately. It could be years before these are activated. But, the parents of this child would make sure that they're aware of the health needs, the dietary needs of this child, the needs for them to drink lots of water because of fire, the needs for them to have lots of fruit and veggies because they are sensitive and they will have health conflicts. They need to read books and to have someone read stories to them to put them to sleep at night because they worry a lot. Okay, so we are building a picture of what we can see in the chart. Now, I've focused on the planets and the houses that they're in, but all of these houses, even though they're empty, they still have importance because of their rulership. And let me look at this 12th house. Sun rules Leo. Leo is the 5th house of friendships. Because of its rulership, the sun will draw in that 5th house into the 12th. So this child will need close friends so that they don't feel abandoned. Venus rules Libra. So Libra gets drawn into the 12th house as well. So this is the cave that closes up to keep them safe from the harsh world out there. So their friendships are doubled up here. Friendships here and close partners and friendships here. Customers, everything comes through the 12th house, through the 7th. And so they need people to be super close. So there's going to be a growing dependency on others. And we don't really want that, because if you're relying on validation from others to feel safe and secure within yourself, then you're setting yourself up for a fall. People don't really care. You need to rely on yourself. So this child would learn very early in life through their parents reading stories and talking to them, and grandparents, and teaching them how to manage their emotions and their physical activities and their health, how to manage loneliness. So they would build up a community within themselves. So they teach them to meditate, use guided meditations like I've got on SoundCloud to teach them that they can actually go and build their internal community. And we're not talking psychosis here. We're not talking delusion or illusion. We're talking how to heal in a safe way and to feel valued and nurtured, healing yourself. And that's the inner child meditation. And this infant would learn to do that so easily. So I would be doing a lot of reading at night time, a lot of fantasy work, a lot of toys, physical toys, not computer toys. I'd be I'm very inclined to have lots of dolls and castles and dragons, depends on their gender and their interest. But I get them interested in a lot of things because they will sort that out themselves, what they're interested in. And then we would make up games. We would make up our own stories. And we'd make videos like I'm doing here of them telling stories or play acting and things like that. So we want imagination to engage that because it is necessary to manage that and that. Okay, so Mercury gets along with every planet. When you look at Mercury, that is the conscious mind. It rules the 3rd house. The 3rd house is basically schooling for the first 7 to 10 years. It's also irritability, the house of impatience. And we would look at where Mercury is in the chart, in the houses and the signs, and interpret it in terms of its mental acuity and mental action and how they are expressing or decoding the world around them and understand them intellectually. The Venus is friendships. There's a plus sign, means friends, connecting. Mercury gets on with everybody. He is flexible, adaptable, malleable. He doesn't care who he's with. He'll start up a conversation with anyone. So Mercury is nice anywhere in the chart. Venus, however, is a bit fussy. There are some planets and some signs that Venus is more comfortable in, and you would need to learn that yourself for your interpretation. And remember, my bent is looking at the planets as people. This is the clothes they wear and their personality, and this is where their action, where they're doing it. Okay? So Venus, anywhere in the chart, you would have to learn, how do Venus and Mars get on? Generally, they get on really, really well. Boy and girl, plus minus, yin yang. But it's a sign that will determine how well they get along. And Mars. Mars is the boy. That's the boy energy. It's a little boy that runs and runs and runs and falls over and grazes his knee. And he runs back to Mum crying, and Mum kisses his knee, and he's fine. And he jumps up and Dad says, "Come on, son, let's get back in there." And the little boy rushes back out again. That's what Mars is. Mars is not cruel. Mars is not violent. Same with Aries. It's the little ram, the little boy ram. Just a mindset for an astrologer is to look at these signs and planets in terms of personality, and then it gets easy. That's how it works for me anyway. So Mars generally gets along okay with any sign, but because he's so active, this really colours where that action and activity is channeled, or how it's channeled. And the house is the where. And his relationships with some of the planets is great. Like Pluto's cool, because Pluto's bigger and more powerful. And he can use Mars's energy because Mars is not malicious. He'd love to go and play with Pluto because Pluto's got lots of toys. He's got lots of power. But Mars and the Moon, well, they would have to negotiate a means of getting on because the Moon is emotional. Mars is fire, is action, and he sometimes says something at the wrong time. The Moon will get embarrassed. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. That's just an introduction, and I'll do some more on children's charts. Particularly as I get older, I can look at Jupiter in particular. Jupiter being a strange planet because it's both inner planet, a personal planet, as well as an outer planet. They call it the bridging planet. But anyway, thanks for watching, and let me know what else you'd like to see me do some work on. Thank you.